Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to join us tonight to learn how to be bear aware in Topanga. I want to thank the town council, Stacy, Jaspreet, and Taylor, who are organizing all of this and doing all the technical stuff to make this happen. And I also want to thank Daniel Vicente from Supervisor Horvath's office for coming to join us this evening, along with representatives from Waste Management, Steve Lee, Erick Quintero, and Kim Orht. And they are here in addition to the speakers that we'll just introduce in a moment from the National Park Service and CDFW, and Susan from Topanga Animal Rescue. So the purpose of tonight's Zoom is to get us all up to speed on how we can live with these bears safely and encourage them to do the things that bears are supposed to do and discourage them from doing things that are harmful to them and could eventually lead to some unhappy things. So, to that end, and to make sure that we reach as many people as we possibly can, this Zoom is being recorded and it will be posted on the onetopanga.com site after the meeting. If you have questions tonight that you would like to pose to any of our speakers, please put your questions in the chat. We may or may not be able to get through all the questions tonight in the time that we have allotted, but if you put them in the chat, that means that we will be able to answer them offline after the meeting is over. And again, that information will get posted to onetopanga.com. And I definitely want to give a shout out to Taylor and Stacy, who do an amazing job of keeping the One Topanga website up to speed and providing all kinds of important things for our community there. So we're going to start tonight with what's happening here in Topanga, and I'm going to turn it over to Susan Clark from Topanga Animal Rescue because she's been running point on a lot of the immediate problems that we've been seeing. So take it away, Susan.
Hi, for you new residents, hello, I'm Susan Clark of Topanga Animal Rescue. I'm a Chief Operating Officer for TAR and a critical care veterinary nurse. I've been working in Topanga for the last 37 years, Topanga and beyond. And we're basically boots on the ground working on emergencies, transporting injured animals to veterinary hospitals and wildlife to the wildlife veterinary hospitals. So I have been fielding calls and answering calls, boots on the ground, in the last few months regarding our newest resident bear with her cubs. And a lot of the community have voiced their concerns to Topanga Animal Rescue. So I hope with our experts here this evening, your questions will be answered. Some of the questions they had were regarding the trash can situation, composting and how the composting situation is going to work, people putting food out for bears, big disagreements between neighbors, kids camping on the creek bed and in their yards here. Particularly it was the summer holidays, camping, they were midnight snacks was the biggest problem. Also, the car situation and how we address Highway 27. And there definitely have been signs that we have worked as a community to set out. So hopefully people have some other suggestions to get that out to commuters. So, and if you'd like to contact me, my emergency number is on our website. If you have any further questions, I'll leave it up to Rosi now.
Thanks so much. I think I actually forgot to introduce myself. I'm Rosi Dagit. I'm a principal conservation biologist for the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains. And I've been doing research and restoration work in a variety of the watersheds of the Santa Monica Mountains. But I've lived here in Topanga for 38 years, which is amazing. Thanks so much, Susan, for that. And do be sure you put your questions in the chat as we go forward. So with that, we're going to turn our attention to our National Park Service colleague, Jeff Sikich. And he is a wildlife biologist with the National Park Service. And he's been kind of the key person in the field work for doing the mountain lion study, the large carnivore study. He's been involved in looking at the impacts of urbanization and habitat fragmentation on mountain lions, but also is looking at outreach, education, habitat conservation efforts. And while we've loved having Jeff here since 2002, working in the Santa Monica Mountains, he has a background in doing mountain lion and bear and road ecology research for carnivores throughout Arizona, Montana, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Peru. So it's really wonderful that we've got someone with Jeff's expertise here to give us an update on what we know about the history of bears in the Santa Monica Mountains. So take it away, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rosie. Let me share my screen here. Okay.
All good.
Are we all good? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff, National Park Service wildlife biologist here. As Rosie said, I've been here since 2002. For a while, managed the field work for a long-term mountain lion study, work on different road ecology projects here. And through the years, we've learned a little bit about black bears as well. So I'm going to kind of set the stage of what we know about black bears in the Santa Monica Mountains. I'm going to try to run through this quickly. And then Jessica West with CDFW is really going to, she has an excellent presentation to go into more of bear biology, BB14 and these 3 cubs, and conflict prevention. All right, let me try to advance these slides. And there we go. So framing this around our main study area, I'm going to be referencing these different mountain ranges. So the Santa Monica Mountains, of course, core area. Also the Simi Hills we do work in between the 101 and the 118. And then the Santa Susana Mountains. So west of the 5, south of the 126, and north of 118. This is our nearest population of black bears in the area. And so, throughout our lion study, the 23 years here, we have data on 128 individuals that we captured and marked, but we have very limited information on black bears. We do have some, though, while conducting our mountain lion research. Between 2004 and 2015, we were doing a lot of work up in the Santa Susana Mountains where we had some incidental captures of black bears in our mountain lion traps. So we actually captured 10 individuals there, BB1 through BB10. That's black bear number 1. It's a naming system we use. And then the consecutive order in which we capture them. When we captured these bears, we still completed full workups, taking morphological measurements, general health assessment, and collecting biological samples, and also putting unique identifiable colored ear tags in. So we were able to get some mark recapture data with our remote cameras. And then starting in 2022, we started our 118 Rocky Peak study with Caltrans. And we GPS collared along with CDFW a few bears in the area to look at movement potentially across these roadways. And then in this past year, CDFW captured BB14, and then we marked 3 along with CDFW, 3 cubs at the den who we are calling BB15, 16, and 17. And Jessica will go into more detail about them later. But history of bears in our mountains, especially in the Santa Monica Mountains, as I said, nearest population up in the Santa Susana Mountains. but we have occasionally documented them in south of the 118 freeway in the Simi Hills through the years. Occasionally a bear ends up in someone's backyard, in a pool, up in a tree. But very rare in the Santa Monica Mountains, at least since the time I've been here since '02. Back in around 2002, 2003, I think it was, there was a black bear carcass discovered under a landslide in Malibu Creek State Park. And then in 2006, we documented on remote cameras for a 3-month period this one individual bear, and then it disappeared. And then also around that same year, soon after, there was a black bear killed on the 101 near Lindero Canyon, so likely that same individual. And then since then, just until recently, now we have GPS data from 2 radio-collared bears in the Santa Monica Mountains, BB12 and BB14. So we've had a lot of interest in restoring landscape connectivity in the area for decades now, working with multiple partners. One of those partners is Caltrans, and we've worked on many road ecology projects with them, starting in around 2004, around 10 total. And one of the more recent ones has been the Rocky Peak project along the 118 freeway right here. And with any of these road ecology studies, we're setting up a lot of remote cameras. We're monitoring wildlife movement adjacent to roadways and using any potential crossings like undercrossings, road overpasses, bridges, culverts, etc. And we're also getting movement data by GPS radio collaring different species, mainly mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes, fox, recently deer. And then with the Rocky Peak study, for the first time, we placed GPS radio collars working with CDFW on a few bears as well. And so BB11 was the first black bear. See, mountain lions are always on my mind. First black bear we radio collared, a 15-year-old female in the Santa Susana Mountains. We followed her for 13 months. So the radio collars we placed on them are set to drop off at the 13-month mark, and then we can collect it, download all the data. Here's her data points. Nothing super exciting, although we found it exciting because it's the first documented bear where we got GPS data in the Santa Susana Mountains. She pretty much stayed in all of the open space areas just north of the Rocky Peak area. And then in 2023, we captured a black bear in the Santa Monica Mountains, BB12, a 4-year-old male. We only followed him for 3 months. Unfortunately, he died. But this was a super interesting animal. He was the first black bear we ever captured and radio collared in the Santa Monica Mountains. And it was very interesting too, because we were getting remote camera photos of him for nearly 2 years before his capture. We captured him on our NPS property near Conejo Peak, western Santa Monica Mountains. And here's what his data looks like. These individual GPS locations that we were getting every 2 hours throughout the day. Soon after we captured him, it's pretty cool. He went right into West Malibu and was cruising along the beach there. Photos from different hikers showing his tracks right in the sand. He actually fed on a rotten sea lion carcass. And then pretty much hung around the western end, crossed the 101 freeway right at the Conejo grade, another area right now where we're currently doing a road ecology project to hopefully improve connectivity out here as well. Cruised north, crossed State Route 23, crossed the 118, heading north around Topo Canyon, and then was hanging around the Santa Susana Mountains for a while, likely the area he was born in. And then he came right back. Heading back, he was struck on the 101, unfortunately, by a vehicle and died right on the Conejo grade there. BB13, a 10-year-old female, also we captured in the Santa Susana Mountains. We only followed her for 4 months before her collar slipped off. Again, similar to BB11, not a huge home range, but staying in the natural areas of the Santa Susana Mountains. Is real cool though, because after she emerged from the den, I hiked in to retrieve the collar and I found her den site. So we were able to collect some data there. It was this brilliant spot. It was south facing, super steep. It was tough to get to. And it was super cool inside. She had a little nest that she made, nice and cool in there. And here are the home ranges for these animals in the southeastern part of the Santa Monica's there. That's BB14, which Jessica will soon talk about her movement since they radio collared her. Um, but home range size is fairly small for BB11 and BB13. 13 square kilometers and 5 square kilometers. That's roughly, what is that? 5 square miles and 2 square miles. And I want to thank Joanne Moriarty, who I work with at NPS. She's leading up the 118 study and made these great maps and home ranges as part of that project. So with all these animals we're following, we're really interested in their movements along these freeways, these major barriers that we have found through all of our wildlife work. Everything from lizards to lions and bears even. You know, these freeways are major barriers and sources of mortality. This is right at Rocky Peak area. Right there, there's the Corriganville Tunnel, a tunnel that was built for equestrians and hikers, but we know wildlife will use it. Back in 2003, we had P3, the third lion we ever captured, use that tunnel, but a lot of improvements can happen here. But BB14 and during her travels crossed the 118 4 total times, 3 times in this area of the Corriganville Tunnel. And one of the times we got a photo of her using the tunnel itself. The other 2, we think she just got lucky and likely ran across the road. The other important area is Liberty Canyon along the 101 freeway. Many of you are maybe familiar with this area. It's one of our last remaining areas along the 101 where we have natural protected habitat leading up to both sides. This natural pinch point. Construction began on the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing in 2022 and should be finished by the end of next year. Super exciting time. Here's a live view of construction in progress as of yesterday. But the interesting thing, when BB14, looking at our GPS points, first came down, I think CDFW has a college program to take a location every hour, but she was located right above the north end of the crossing there, and then continued east past Liberty Canyon Road. And then I believe she just got lucky and crossed at grade. She crossed the 101 3 times in total since we've been tracking her. The second time she actually used Liberty Canyon Road underpass. The eastern side, unvegetated side, she went from south to north to safely navigate the 101. And it's important to remember that, you know, with this wildlife crossing being built, it's not only for lions we're building this for, but for all species. And it's good to think about, you know, for bears as well. And, you know, what we can do now to prevent conflicts with bears is just a starting point. Well, you know, we've had bears in the past. We currently have one and her cubs, and we'll likely have bears in the future too, especially not only with the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing, but all these different connectivity projects we're working on in the region. And then I can't not talk about keeping your animals safe. In all my lion talks, I remind folks, you know, if you have livestock, animals, especially sheep and goats, you know, you wanna keep them safe. I know a lot of you in Topanga are doing the right thing. You're doing this, and it's great to see. But it's confining your livestock and completely secured and covered enclosures, particularly at night. And, you know, we're not only thinking about mountain lions now and coyotes, but we're thinking about bears. So you have chicken coops, right? You need to make them bear proof. And Jessica will touch on that more as well. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. That was really interesting and, you know, so cool to know that BB14 is not the very first, but she certainly has made her mark. And it's really great to see what's going on. So if you have any questions for Jeff specifically, please put your questions in the chat. And now we're going to turn the Zoom over to Jessica West, who is from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Jessica was born and raised in Santa Clarita and has done over 20 years worth of amazing research on black bears, mountain lions, and mule deer, which is pretty interesting, all in the Southern California area. But I think what's really important about what she's going to be speaking to us about tonight is not only about black bear biology and behavior, but about what's happening here in Topanga and how we can avoid conflict with BB14 and her cubs. So with that, I'd like to thank Jessica and invite her to take over.
All righty, thank you so much, Rosie. Let me go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. All right, how are we looking?
Great, we see you.
Okay, perfect. Give me just one moment there, folks. I just need to pull up one more thing. Okay, still looking good?
Yes.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And hello and good evening. My name is Jessica West, and I am an environmental scientist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And again, I'd like to thank the Topanga Town Council for hosting this event tonight, especially big thanks to Rosie and Stacy just for helping put it all together. And tonight we will be discussing a little bit about bear biology and some of the research that we as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife have been doing with bears, as well as a background on bear Yellow 2291/BB14. It is the same bear, and we'll go into why she has two different names here in a bit, as well as her activity in Topanga with the cubs. And then we're going to dive into how we as CDFW typically manage bears, and then specifically our current approach to the activity that's been happening in Topanga. And then we're going to go through some tips and tricks, right, for conflict prevention with bears. And again, I will be very happy to take any questions at the end. I will also be providing my contact information if you'd like to follow up with me or ask any questions offline. And before we get started, I did just want to provide the following acknowledgement. We are very aware that human-wildlife conflict can oftentimes become very politicized. It can become very emotional. Wildlife management and human-wildlife conflict is complex, contextual. It is complicated, to say the least. Attitudes, values, perception, tolerance of wildlife varies widely across not even just the state, but even in Southern California, as we know. And then we do just want to acknowledge too that our community knowledge, identities, traditions, these are all interconnected with our natural resources. And so, we as CDFW really want to help these communities address this kind of conflict proactively versus reactively whenever possible. And we do recognize that this is very new for Topanga. Like Jeff said, I mean, we've had some bear activity, but this is really the first time that we've had a family unit of bears in the Santa Monicas. So we recognize that, and we just are really excited to work through this with you as the community as we continue to monitor this activity. Very quickly, just in case folks aren't familiar with who we are, what we do, just wanted to throw this slide up real quick. You might know us as the Department of Fish and Game. We are the same agency. We just changed our name back in 2015. We were founded in 1951, and we are a regulatory, conservation-based state management agency for wildlife in California. And so we are the folks then that are implementing that policy that's established by the Fish and Game Commission. So we're essentially the messengers. But we are tasked with protecting and maintaining healthy wildlife populations while also overseeing everything that happens with those wildlife, including scientific, commercial, recreational use, educational use. And we are also that lead agency that is charged with black bear management, I should say population management and conservation in California. Sometimes I think there's some confusion about, is it the Park Service that manages the bears? Is it CDFW? And so while we are working very closely with the Park Service, especially regarding this recent bear activity, it is us as the department that are actively managing these bears, while NPS does all of their amazing research as well. And speaking of, let's first discuss a little bit about some basic bear biology and then some of the current research efforts that are happening, including why it is that we even know about this bear in Topanga. So the American black bear is our only remaining bear species in California. The last credible sighting of a California grizzly bear was actually right outside of Sequoia National Park in 1924. And so despite the name black bear, not all black bears are actually black. In fact, most of our Southern California bears actually range from blonde, brown, cinnamon, strawberry. We often joke that they're lighter in color because of all that great California sunshine, but we do see dark black bears from time to time. And so let's just go through some kind of basic bear biology here. Typical habitat for these species, it's typically going to be mountainous foothill areas above about 3,000 foot elevation. Of course, we have to remember that not all wildlife follow these rules, right? These are just typical habitat. We can definitely see bears at sea level as well, or closer or lower in elevation. Adult weight is going to vary widely depending on resources, time of year, but males in Southern California are going to range somewhere between about 200 to 375 pounds, and females are somewhere between 100 to 200. Again, quite a variety here. Home range size also varies widely. So like Jeff was pointing out with the home range sizes that we saw with the other bears in the Santa Susana Mountains, it really just depends on resource availability, the habitat quality. There's a lot that goes into it. Usually it's somewhere between about 60 to 150 square miles, but in places like Angeles National Forest, for example, where we have our foothill communities that do experience a lot of bear activity, sometimes that range can only be somewhere to about 3 to 11. And again, it really just depends on resources. If they have all of the food and the habitat requirements that they need within a small area, there's really no need to have a larger home range size. And so speaking of food, black bears are like us. They are omnivores. They are going to be consuming a lot of native fruits, nuts, roots, grasses, insects. They do love acorns in the fall. And then animal protein. While black bears are primarily going to be focusing more on plant material, they do occasionally, or I should say, they will take animal protein in the form of deer fawns in the spring. So we do see that kind of relationship with ungulate species as well. And then unfortunately, they do occasionally show interest in chickens as well as beehives. And it's not necessarily the honey that they're going for, but it's also the larva within the beehives. Hibernation, I wanted to point out, not all bears are actually going to do this in Southern California. We're still learning a lot about how bears hibernate, or even if they just go into sort of a torpor period. But if they do, it's going to be typically between November and March. However, if it is a female pregnant bear, she must go into hibernation. That's actually the only way that they can have their cubs in the den. And then last but not least, our current population estimate for all of California, so this is statewide, is somewhere in the range of about 58,000. This is, again, just our best estimate at this time. There's some work right now happening to try to get some better estimates. And here in the transverse ranges, which is essentially, our section of Los Padres National Forest in Santa Barbara, Ventura County, all the way into Angeles National Forest, that's our transverse ranges, somewhere between about 1,600 bears is what we're currently thinking are in this general area. And lifespan for these guys is about 15 to 25 years. So moving on quickly here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about bear senses. So sight for these guys is going to be about equal to humans. They can see a little bit better at nighttime, as you can imagine. Hearing, however, is excellent. As you can see, they have these great little sonar-like discs right up here, their ears on their heads. So hearing is phenomenal. But really, folks, it is their smell. It is mind-bogglingly amazing. They can actually smell 100 times better than a human and 7 times better than a bloodhound dog. So I can't stress just how incredible their sense of smell is. And this is what really serves them in finding all of the food and all of the calories they require on any given day. And unfortunately is what oftentimes gets these bears into quote unquote trouble, right? Because that sense of smell is just so amazing and they are just constantly looking for food. So moving on real quick, I just wanted to cover, again, we are actively studying black bears right now in the state, and we are currently working under this statewide black bear monitoring project. Really, this project is aiming to capture, ear tag, GPS collar, and monitor black bears in California to learn more about abundance, their vital rates statewide, what kind of habitat selection are we looking at here? We know California is diverse with its ecosystem types. And so just really trying to learn more about how they're moving about the landscape. What particular habitats are we seeing more use in, seasonal distribution as well. We're also really trying to learn more about our local black bear population, including now in the Santa Monica's, but in Los Padres and Angeles National Forest, which again are our big neighboring areas in which we have a lot of recruitment from bears. We want to learn more about how many are surviving. What is it that they are perishing from if they when they pass away, how many cubs are being born and how many of them actually survive to adulthood. And of course, also wanting to learn more about how human activity is going to be impacting these bears, whether that's from wildfire, hunting, drought, human wildlife conflict, and then also really trying to build up this ever-growing database of bear genetics or DNA, which has been really, really amazing. And I did just want to note, because this is a really common question we get or thought. A lot of times folks will see a bear with an ear tag or they're with a collar and they'll say, oh, that must have been a conflict bear. But really not necessarily. It just means that at some point in time, CDFW or the Park Service as well had that bear in hand and just had the ability to place an ear tag and a collar for ongoing monitoring. So some of these bears are fully what we call, quote unquote, wild bears that have never stepped foot in a residential community, and they're wearing an ear tag and a GPS collar. But again, it doesn't mean that they are necessarily a conflict bear. And we'll get into more what that actually means. So let's discuss a bit more about the recent bear activity in Topanga, as well as the history of the female bear known as Yellow 2291 to us as the department and BB14 as the Park Service, as well as her 3 cubs that are currently occupying the Topanga community. So first, we're going to quickly go through some of her activity month by month, from starting up right when we captured her all the way up until today. And then I'm planning to show a video of the bear's overall GPS collar data at the end, just to show her movement in and around the Santa Monica's. So it'll all come together. But for now, we're just going to go month by month, and then I'll show you the collar data at the end. So Yellow 2291 was captured in the city of Claremont in May of 2024. She's an adult bear at the time. She was estimated to be about 3 to 5 years old, about 175 pounds. And she was captured by us as the department during some other bear trapping efforts that were happening in the community at the time. She was given her ear tags and her GPS collar at that time, and then moved a little bit further back into Angeles National Forest. And again, we are currently monitoring her in partnership with the Park Service. So we gave her the designation Yellow 2291 based on the random color and number ear tag that was placed in her right ear. So for female bears, we use the ear tag in the right ear to give them their name designation. She does also have an orange ear tag in her left ear. And just having 2 tags is helpful just for quick identification. But again, completely arbitrary. It doesn't mean anything other than just figuring out or wanting to have a designation. So going off of the right ear tag is how we referred to her when she was initially captured. And then here's this photo again that Jeff had just shared. In June of 2024, suddenly this bear began traveling west along the entirety of the 210 corridor. She crossed 4 major highways at that time, and then she entered the Santa Susana Mountains, the Simi Hills, and then the Santa Monica's, and she stayed there for a short time, and then actually left the Santa Monica. So this was all within June of 2024. And then hopefully this video works. This was actually a video that I took of Yellow 2291/BB14. Sorry, we're going to go back and forth with it, at Chesborough Canyon Park, which is just north of the 101 freeway. So I believe this was either the day before or that night that she actually crossed the freeway. But yeah, so she was hanging out in Chesborough Canyon Park just right before she crossed. And then come July 2024, again, she was heading out of the Santa Monica's at this time. She had gone through the Simi Hills and was in the Santa Susana Mountains. For whatever reason, she took a wrong turn, it seemed like, and ended up in very urban Chatsworth, where she had no immediate access route back to habitat. And so we again then as CDFW stepped in, we captured her in the city, and I'm talking downtown Chatsworth. And then presumably it seemed like she was heading back into Angeles National Forest. So that's where we placed her again. where she then proceeded to head east along the length of the corridor. And I know this was a question that some folks were asking as far as, when did she actually become pregnant? Because there were some folks asking about, well, is there a male bear that we know of in the Santa Monicas currently? We are not currently aware of any males. She's the only bear that we know about currently in the Santa Monicas. So very likely, just given the time of year, it was likely when she was in Angeles National Forest that she became pregnant, since this is that typical breeding period. So just wanted to answer that question right now. And then in August and September, she stayed in the Eastern Angeles National Forest. She stopped very briefly in the community of Silmar before turning around yet again and traveling back west along the 210 corridor, crossed those same 4 major highways back into Santa Susanna's, Simi Hills, Santa Monica's. And at that time, she was actually observed in Malibu, a couple of communities there. She was also seen on the Pepperdine campus, which is the photo you can see on the right here. She even went up to the 405 freeway, which was pretty crazy to see. And so October, November, December of 2024, we noticed that she started to show less movement just in her collar data, which indicated that, yeah, this bear might actually be hibernating or even actively denning. And then, sure enough, in March of 2025, she was confirmed to have been denning, and 3 cubs were confirmed by CDFW and the Park Service when we all actually visited the den together. There were 2 males and 1 female, which are the 3 bear cubs that you still see moving around Topanga today. Hopefully that video is working. The cubs were not given ear tags just because, again, they're very small. They were given pit tags, however, so just like you would give a dog or a cat. So they do have that for identification at this time. Measurements, DNA samples were collected, and the adult female, she was not present at the time of the den check, but looking at her collar data, we could see that she actually did remain close by while we were there doing this den check. And you can see the photo in the bottom right corner there. That's actually her in the den again, having returned very shortly after we had left. And so I can't say exactly where the den was located, but I can say it was in a very remote area near Topanga Canyon. It was near the Palisades fire burn area, but she was not directly impacted by the fire. So she actually continued denning all throughout the Palisades, which was pretty amazing to see. And then this leads us up to present day. So in April and May, that's right about the time they started to leave the den. And in May was when we had received our first confirmed sighting by a resident in Topanga. And ever since June, July, all the way up till August now, we have been receiving ongoing reports of the cubs as well as BB14. I definitely want to check in with some of the other reports because I'm thinking we may not be hearing everything, and that's okay. I know sometimes it's a little bit challenging to know who to go to or who to report sightings to. So I'm going to want to connect with folks here and see what kind of reports we may have missed. And so again, just a quick recap of this bear's movement. I'm going to show you this video of her GPS data. It does go a little quick, so just a heads up. And this is May through September of 2024. And I stopped it in September only because that's when she really began restricting her movements to Topanga only. But again, this will go a little quick, but I just want to show you just how extensive of movement this is. So here we are making our first trek across the highways into the Santa Monicas, back out, Chatsworth, Angeles National Forest, out and back, going through the highways again, in the Santa Monicas once again. And then you'll see she heads over to the 405 here at one point, right there. A couple of times, actually. I forgot it was twice. And then, yeah, she's been in Topanga ever since. So I just, again, a little quick, but you can see just looking at this panned out view, I mean, extensive movement. We were not expecting to see this when we captured this non-target bear in Claremont. So it's been really incredible to see this range of movement, especially for a female bear. And then I also wanted to show, this is a general overview of the bear's GPS collar data that's zoomed out throughout Topanga. And this is from April through August. And you can see she has crossed Highway 27 multiple times. She and the cubs have been moving quite a bit between the east and west side of Topanga. Haven't been able to do a deep dive into the data or analyze, how long or how often she's spending in certain areas yet. So this is all just very preliminary raw data. But just to give you an idea, she is the family is definitely within the Topanga area and has been since at least April. Okay, so moving on now to a little bit more about what makes a conflict bear and how we as the department typically manage those kinds of bear, including our approach for Topanga. So again, I keep referring to a conflict bear. What does this actually mean? So this is per our policy. This is a bear that requires some kind of management action or response from CDFW or even potentially local law enforcement, the public. It all just really depends on the behavior and the situation that we're seeing from that bear. I just, want to make a point that bears really are typically going to avoid those direct interactions with people. Black bears by nature are very non-confrontational, but really, they retain that aversion to people, but they might start to then associate humans or what we're just referring to as human use areas. So, homes, livestock areas with resources. And again, it's simply wildlife acting like wildlife. It's usually the humans who consider that behavior to be a conflict. But this is just our definition, at least per our policy. And so again, every bear, every situation is going to be unique. But per our statewide bear policy, there are particular types of conflict bears. And CDFW response is really going to be dictated by what type of conflict we are seeing. So this is a very quick, basic overview, just for time's sake. Highly recommend visiting our website. You can read our recently published Black Bear Conservation and Management Plan for California, as well as our current policies, if you really want to dive into, specifically how we respond to different types of conflict bears. But again, basic overview here. So a type of conflict bear could even be as simple as a sighting or sometimes also what we would call a no harm, no foul bear. This is usually a bear that's, again, just seen at one point in time, no conflict really reported, or it's a bear that winds up in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? So this is a bear that has no immediate access route back to suitable habitat. And usually our recommendations at that time are to either give space and time for that animal to leave on its own. Sometimes maybe hazing or scaring that animal might be needed. But again, if this animal is not able to get back to suitable habitat, then we as CDFW may make that determination to move in and then physically, chemically immobilize that animal and move them to more suitable habitat. And then we come to habituated or general nuisance bears. These are bears that are going to be accessing trash. So very similar to what we're seeing with BB14 right now and her cubs. It's a bear that shows little to no overt reaction to people as a result of being repeatedly exposed to humans and human stimuli. And typically for these kinds of conflict bears, our first recommendation is to remove or prevent access to those attractants. We also recommend deterrence and hazing when appropriate. Then just again, going up that conflict scale, we do also have what are known as depredation bears. So this is a bear that is threatening to, damaging, or actually destroying property. At that time, lethal permits actually can be requested and issued to a property owner by CDFW that then would then allow for that property owner to lethally remove the bear. But these permits are only issued after some kind of verified property damage or loss has occurred. Again, and it's been verified that yes, the damage was caused by a bear. And then also after discussing non-lethal options and assessing those as well. And then that would be how somebody would be able to receive a permit. And then the much less common kind of conflict bear that we come across is a public safety bear. So this is a bear that may need to be lethally removed if it has made some kind of physical contact with a human, or it's exhibiting an immediate threat to public health and safety. And this is given the totality of the circumstances. And I just want to note that only our law enforcement division or personnel can actually make that determination of a public safety bear. But this includes situations where a bear remains a threat, despite efforts to try to encourage it to leave an area, through active means. And so again, very quick overview. I'm happy to answer any questions about conflict response, or you can also check out our website just to learn more about our policies. And so moving on then specifically to Topanga, what's going on here? And I think this is probably the number one question that we have been asked, and rightfully so. There are no current plans right now to move this bear or her cubs out of Topanga. Again, we just wanted to answer a number of questions that we've received and touch on specifically how we're proceeding at this time with this bear family. So again, no current plans to move this bear or the cubs. And really, this is because we as CDFW, we're not going to be typically interfering with those natural movements or activities of wildlife, right? It's essentially kicking the can down the line. It's moving the conflict somewhere else. And again, we really wanted to stress that this bear already has been relocated twice into Angeles National Forest. She traveled on her own into the Santa Monica Mountains twice. You know, again, she was not placed there by CDFW or the Park Service. She has shown just incredible ability for movement. And so for that reason, you know, my gosh, we don't even know where would be the right place for this bear, right? Given the fact that she has this extensive ability to move. Their homing abilities are also incredible. It's very possible that the family would attempt to return if they were moved, which then would increase that risk of vehicle strikes or even other conflicts with bears if we're placing, you know, a family unit of bears in an area with a large male. And again, there's just inherent risks, right? Anytime you're attempting to move any animal, not even just a family unit of bears, but really any animal. If it was ever going to be done, it would be conducted by CDFW biologists after a relocation plan was approved by our upper management. And so we have a whole group of professionals, including veterinarians, law enforcement, supervisory staff that get together and make these ultimate decisions. Again, there's no plans to do this at this time, but that would be the process if we ever did look into it. So really, it doesn't fix the root of the conflict, right? Like Jeff said, there's a very good chance that we're going to have more bears in the Santa Monicas and even in Topanga Canyon as well in the future. So really, our approach right now is looking at the root of the conflict, right? So recognizing that if we have all of these things that bears need to survive, including the food, water, shelter, it's going to continue to attract them as well as other wildlife too. We know this is not just for bears, right? This is for coyotes, this is mountain lions, this is bobcats. So it's really trying to address what is it that's causing this level of conflict. And so looking ahead now at the cubs, and hopefully I can get this video working as well. This was provided by a Topanga resident. This is right outside of Froggy's. So looking ahead at the cubs now, right? Because again, like we said, this is a very unique situation, and we're really just trying to, you know, figure out the best methodology here going forward while continuing to work with the community. So just to make note, you know, cubs are typically going to stay with mom for about 1.5 years. They're weaned at about 6 to 8 months. They follow her closely. They are learning everything from mom at this point in time. And so unfortunately, what that does mean is the cubs are currently learning that food means trash cans in Topanga, which we see this. This isn't, you know, a unique thing, unfortunately, right? This is something we see all across foothill communities that have bear activity. And again, I just want to note that, you know, we as a department would not typically move bears just because they're accessing trash. You know, it's that lower level of conflict. And then, you know, another question, of course, is the cubs are eventually going to disperse out and find their own home ranges. We don't know if that means that they are going to stay in Topanga, if they're going to stay in the Santa Monicas. Perhaps they'll try to disperse north of Highway 101, maybe even using the crossing at some point. You know, we really don't know where the cubs or even mom, right? You know, once she eventually no longer has cubs with her, it's anyone's guess, you know, where she's going to head to. It's really not something we can predict, much like how we can't prevent the bears or any other wildlife, right, from crossing roads or highways. It's just that risk that wildlife take in this fragmented habitat. And then I also very quickly just wanted to touch on some coyote interactions, since we have had a couple of reports of this happening. This is another video. This was actually in the Santa Susana Mountains, and you'll be able to see, this was August of 2024. This is BB14, and you'll see in a moment here, a coyote actually is following fairly closer behind her. But there have been reports, right, of this bear and her cubs actually having interactions with coyotes. It's not the first known instance. We actually do see this across Angeles National Forest. There's the coyote, as well as Los Padres. Coyotes are known to follow bears. They will scavenge food that's left behind, or they may also do what's known as escorting behavior, where they will actually try to encourage a bear to leave if they're defending a a resource or part of their territory. And I think something that's important to consider is that, especially in the Santa Monica Mountains, most coyotes probably haven't had that opportunity to interact with bears yet. It's a very new and novel situation for them. But the good news is the cubs, and if BB14 needed to, they can climb trees to escape. That is their main defense. Either is to leave the area, or they will also head up trees as well, which we have seen happen in Topanga, where coyotes have actually caused the cubs to go up trees. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. So moving on to conflict prevention. This is the last bit of my presentation. I think I'm still doing okay on time. The good news is there are so many ways to try and prevent conflict from occurring. The great thing about conflicts, or excuse me, not conflict, but about deterrence, is that some are motion sensing or passive, which means that you as a human don't even need to be there to discourage the wildlife to give up on a particular behavior or habit 24 hours a day. But this is the use of objects, device, methods, anything really that can dissuade wildlife from interacting with anything really. So including entryways. You can see there's an example of an unwelcome mat, which is actually an electrified mat in front of a door. Even things like electric fencing, which we highly recommend for beehives or as chicken coops as well. Ammonia can be used as a scent deterrent. It seems to be hit or miss. I've heard it's worked for some folks, not for others. There are, again, also motion activated lights or strobing lights and sounds that can be very effective in certain locations. So there's all different kinds of deterrents out there. We have tons of recommendations on our website. Highly encourage folks to check out our website, as well as BearWise, which I will provide a link for at the end of this presentation. But again, that idea is just really that we're trying to teach the wildlife that that behavior that they are demonstrating, it just isn't going to be tolerated, right? And it's really for us in trying to prevent property damage or having to clean up after bears getting into trash, but it's also for them. This is really important for the safety of these animals. So just removing the access to the attractants is huge for these animals. Goes a long way in protecting them long term. And I did just want to note, it's not always appropriate to haze, right? So if you have an animal that's sick, or if you're cornering it, if the animal's near a road, we just want to make sure, of course, that if we're deterring an animal, we're not going to be putting it in some other kind of situation that's unsafe for that animal. And of course, like all good things in life, nothing is foolproof. So I just have to make note that no deterrent is going to be 100% effective 100% of the time, right? Probably goes without saying. But that's why we recommend using several methods together. Try different things, use them for an extended period. It might not work initially, but perhaps it will down the line. And every animal is an individual, right? They're going to show varying levels of comfort to deterrence. It just takes time a lot of times for these animals. And then, of course, just a disclaimer, especially for things like electric fencing, it's considered to be very safe as long as it's installed correctly, you're using the right equipment. It's very safe, but still important just to check with city and county ordinances just before utilizing some of these deterrents. So going into some of the specifics now, which I know is what folks are really, really wanting to learn more about today. So let's talk trash, because we know that that is a big concern right now for BB14 and the cubs in Topanga. So by that, we're talking about securing garbage from wildlife. So a couple of ideas. So we highly recommend storing your cans inside of a garage or some other fully enclosed structure, ideally something metal, especially because bears are very strong. It takes pretty much no effort for these guys to actually rip into logs if they're looking for termites. And so if you have a wooden structure, it's probably not going to do it for these bears. They're very determined. So keeping those bins inside of some kind of fully enclosed structure until the morning of pickup is highly recommended. Oh, and there it was. Yes, so place cans on the street the morning of pickup only. Clean those cans frequently, whether that's with ammonia or bleach. It's just really trying to cut down on the smells. And then, yeah, like we've been mentioning, really just advocating for bear resistant trash cans. I know there are several retrofit options out there. Um, I've heard from some folks it's been successful. I've heard from others that hasn't been. Again, it's going to be a little bit dependent on your setup and what kind of straps and how you're doing it exactly. It's never going to be 100% foolproof, but there are ways to retrofit cans. We do have recommendations as well on our website, or you can also contact me at the end or after this presentation, and I'm happy to send those off. But really, the retrofits are great, but we do recommend eventually purchasing or right for those bear resistant cans. They can be a little pricey, and so sometimes we do recommend, if you yourself are not able to have a bear resistant trash can, perhaps you and your neighbors can go in on renting a bear resistant that going forward. It sounds like we're going to be hearing from your waste management provider here very soon. But we always recommend connecting with them. You guys are great. You've already been doing this simply because not not all of these bear resistant cans are going to work for the infrastructure that's set up on these dump trucks that they're using. So it's very important just to connect with your garbage care provider first to discuss the options and see what might actually work for you and your community. So I spent a lot of time on trash simply because that's the number one complaint that we've been hearing about. But there are several other things as well that we recommend doing around your homes, around the community. We often recommend these, or we refer to these recommendations almost as like a yard audit around your home. So some things you might consider implementing around your yard, for your backyard and your garden, harvesting ripe fruit and vegetables, and picking up rotting fruit off the ground to the extent possible. We know that can be challenging, of course, for some folks. There's always going to be something on the ground, but really just trying to reduce the amount of food and the amount of smells that can go a long way. You could even go so far as to look into securing your trees or your gardens or your compost areas with electric fencing as well. Again, highly recommend electric fencing. Barbecues, sanitizing, cleaning them regularly is a great idea. Again, just trying to cut down on smells. Excuse me. Haven't heard too many concerns about this with this particular bear, but some bears will access pools and hot tubs, especially during the summertime, just to cool down. But usually placing some kind of very sturdy cover over these can be enough to deter a bear, or even using deterrents around a pool as well. And then we do recommend avoiding using bird feeders, simply because we kind of joke that, bird feeders are bear feeders, but they're also rat feeders, they're coyote feeders, they're squirrel feeders. You're going to be attracting more than bears when you're purchasing these kinds of bird foods. So planting native plants, right, is going to go a long way in trying to attract birds and pollinators instead of actually using bird seed. And I do see at 7 o'clock, I'll try to go a little bit faster here. Just a couple more slides here. Barnyard animals. I know a lot of folks have chickens, beehives. We've also got livestock. Most of the conflicts we hear about with bears and barnyard animals, I'm using it in quotes here, not so much with goats or with calves. It's mostly chickens and beehives. We really don't hear about instances with horses or larger hoof stock. So not that it doesn't happen. Every now and then we do hear reports about very small goats or sheep being predated by bears. It's not as common though. But in general, the recommendation is to night pen your animals within completely enclosed shelter structures, like Jeff had mentioned here. Almost what you're doing for mountain lions now is almost exactly what you should be doing for bears as well. Just make sure that those structures have a roof, a very sturdy roof, right? Because it needs to be able to potentially support the weight of a full-grown bear. Same with the walls, buried wire. Just be thinking about, a coyote might not be able to push in a fence, but perhaps a bear can. Using electric fencing, again, I'm going to sound like broken record. It's a great tool, very practical for chicken coops and beehives or tie downs as well. You can see an example of that here. Make sure that we're storing any kind of feed also in fully enclosed shelter structures, simply because, again, that smell, even things like grain, alfalfa. I don't really hear about alfalfa being too big of an attractant, but just sweet smelling, like pellets as well. That could be a potential attractant for bears. And then if anyone has koi ponds, creating very deep ponds with hiding structures, that can usually go a long way in preventing bears from being able to access your koi fish. And the same goes for, great blue herons, raccoons as well. And so very quickly, just around the home in general, we do recommend if there are homes with crawl spaces, make sure that those are completely closed off and very securely. You can see an example of a bear that was able to access a crawl space. I think this is Monrovia. But yes, it just needs to be a very sturdy cover that a bear is not able to pull off of the wall. Things like installing those motion detecting strobe lights, alarms, physical deterrence. I do say strobe lights, by the way, only because a strobe light is going to be very novel for a lot of wildlife. It's not something that they would encounter normally in the wild. They can become used to things like street lights or lights that just come on and stay on outside of a home. If they don't have any sort of negative association with it, it really doesn't do a whole lot. So strobing lights can actually be a little bit more effective. Making sure that we're keeping dogs on leash and indoors as well. Supervise them when in yards. This is just all around good practice. Just making sure bears and dogs do not get along. Dogs will often exacerbate situations with bears simply by barking. Bears do not like dogs. And so it's just very important to keep dogs close by to the extent possible. And last but not least, carrying a walking stick, a whistle, an air horn. If you're out hiking or walking in the community just for your own self protection, if that's something you want to carry. And then bear spray is effective with prior knowledge. I would say if you're going to carry it, make sure you know how to use it in advance. And then I believe this is my last slide. I'll go through this a little quick here. In the event that you do have some kind of close encounter with a bear, always stop and don't run, right? We're going to keep that dog on leash and close by. Avoid cornering that animal and just allow them room to escape. Most of the time, they're going to leave the area, right? It's usually those chance encounters. And if we're just giving them that space and that time to allow them to leave the area, most of the time that can prevent, any kind of conflict. But you're going to want to back away slowly. Face that animal, maintain eye contact. There's some debate about whether or not you should do that. With bears, it is, with black bears, yes, maintaining eye contact. If the animal continues to approach you, however, that's when you're going to stand your ground, make yourself look big, you're going to yell, you're going to throw small objects towards the animal. And if in that very rare instance you are attacked by an animal or by a black bear, you do want to fight back. So you don't want to play dead with black bears. But again, in general, I wanted to make note of this simply because, there's concern, and understandably, with having cubs in the area. We often hear about, mama bear being very defensive or protective of cubs, which is absolutely true. However, black bears do tend to be less cub defensive. And by that, I mean, their response is not to engage with a person. Their first response, again, is either to leave the area or to send their cubs up a tree. So I just wanted to make that known. Of course, it goes without saying, don't, get in between mom and cubs. But for the most part, right, black bears are going to try to leave instead of engaging with that person. And remember, just giving the bear space and respect really should prevent most incidents. And this is my very last slide, in addition to my contact info, which I'll follow up with here. Just to wrap things up, wildlife belongs to each of us per that public trust doctrine. They belong to all of us as Californians. And really taking those simple steps to prevent conflicts is going to go a long way. So removing or preventing access to attractants, learning how to protect yourself, your pets, your livestock, and then of course what you all are doing this evening, which is so great, is just spreading that awareness of and appreciation for wildlife. Because if we don't know that there are bears, how can we even begin to try to prevent that conflict if we don't know how to prevent conflict? And so, I'll just end with this, that CDFW is tasked with managing wildlife populations, but it's up to each of us, right, as Californians, as Topangans, to really try to prevent those conflicts from the first place. And so thank you again for the opportunity to connect with you this evening. It's been a pleasure. I'm really excited to be connecting with Topangans. I love your community. I've spent a lot of time in Topanga as well. I've listed several websites on the slide, including the Bearwise website. Highly recommend checking them out. They're a great organization that CDFW has partnered with for education and resource materials. Anything you could ever want to know about resolving human bear conflict is on this website. It's phenomenal. And then also our wildlife incident reporting system, also known as the WEIR. This is the best way to submit sightings and other wildlife interactions directly to us as CDFW. I've also provided my email address if you'd like to connect with me down the line. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any and all questions. So thank you very much, everyone.
Wow, Jessica, you really covered it all and you did it beautifully. That was between you and Jeff. You've really given us a lot to think about. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So we're going to hold questions for just a second. And Stacy, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about what we can do as Topangans to try to manage what seems to be the biggest problem right now, which is trash. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've at the town council, we've received so many people asking about how do we manage our trash. It's just been a really big topic, and I wish I could tell you that there was just one simple answer that could make it all happen, but that's just not the case. There has been a study that was done by Colorado State University that was about a 5-year study on bear-resistant trash bins. And they found that the wildlife-resistant trash cans can assist in human-bear conflict. But it does take about 60% of a neighborhood working together to make a difference of keeping bears away on those streets. So 20 to 30% was not effective. And when we're talking specifically about bears and trash cans, it only works if you can secure your trash can and keep it locked until the morning of your pickup, and then to remove it after your pickup as soon as possible. So that was an interesting study, and it says that we really have to work together as a community to be able to help these bears learn naturally that trash cans is not the way to go for their food source, that to get them into more of a natural environment and a natural way of securing their food. So with that, we reached out to the county supervisor's office and waste management to see what we could do to have some kind of a trash can program. But what we have learned that is, because this is such a new occurrence in the Santa Monica Mountains, that there really is no current trash receptacle program. But we're working right now together to find the best solutions to make that happen. So with that, I would like to introduce Waste Management Representative Steve Lee. Let me stop sharing my screen so that we can see Steve. Steve is the district manager with Waste Management. And I want to just kind of toss it to him at the moment to see what Waste Management has. I know you and I have been in conversation of figuring out ways that we can help residents secure existing trash cans until a more permanent solution is found. And then how do we make that successful for both the resident and with Waste Management being able to incorporate these bear resistant measures within your system and with your trucks?
Well, thank you, everybody. And I want to add that those were great presentations. I definitely learned a lot. And I will start with, been serving the Topanga area as a trash service provider for the last 28 years. And the bears are definitely a new angle that we're going to have to work through and find solutions for. And as Stacy mentioned, it's new to us in this area. We have a lot of research and work to do, which we started. And there's resources to pull from. But again, as others mentioned, I saw some of the chats going through. There's a large cost to many of these options of equipment to prevent the bears from accessing. And in addition to that, we have an operation that we've built, right? So we have a 3-cart system. We have an automated arm to prevent from having our drivers having to get out in most cases to service a cart. And it's good for our people, you know, from a wear and tear standpoint, that these trucks that we use are automated. But with that being said, anything that's done to a current cart is built by a manufacturer for the service with an automatic arm. And we have to be mindful of any alterations of additions of straps that aren't made for the prevention of access by bears or other animals, or the use of chains or stuff like that. I just have this picture of some crazy stuff going on to keep the bears out. That may have worked, but then we get it tangled up in our truck and then we rip it apart anyway. So those are some of the things that have that we've been working through. But Erick, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, good point, Steve. There are, as mentioned, Steve mentioned, there are bear-resistant containers provided that our manufacturers that we purchase our carts from have available. Just because of the nature of things, I think to this point we haven't had the need to purchase bear-resistant carts. So I think it's a new thing for us as well that we're trying to learn how to navigate. Those are guaranteed to be bear resistant, and they've been proven. They've been told me that they're proven and tested. There are other alternatives like the straps. See on the chat, people are mentioning to retrofit existing containers that have a manual capabilities with lock and unlock containers for service. That I don't know. We have not tested it, at least in our areas, and know the effectiveness of it or not. But as mentioned, it's going to take a lot of community involvement to get the bears to modify behavior, right? If Stacy has one at her home but her neighbor doesn't have it, then the bear will just know not to go to Stacy's house, but they'll go to her neighbor's house. So it's going to have to be a more of a adoption across the service area. I know someone mentioned Arcadia. Arcadia also does offer bear resistant car store program. Those do come at a purchase. And I think those are listed at over $300 a container. I think the recent quote we got from our vendor was somewhere in the $225 cost per container for bear resistant manufactured carts. So definitely the cost element is something we need to look into. That would be, I guess, the best alternative for everyone, right? If we had bear resistant carts, no modifications need to be made. But we know that cost factor is also something to consider, so that we can definitely look into other alternatives that may, try to help some folks out. But Kim, do you have anything else you want to add?
I was just going to say that, one thing that we want to reiterate is that we're looking for what is going to be the best for the community. And we know that cost is a huge factor, right? And that's the last thing we want to do. We want to make sure that, for one, the bears are safe, the people are safe, the animals are safe, what's good for the community. And like I think Stacy said when she talked about the case study, it's really not just, we're not looking at it as, one house. It's got to be an entire community. I think I get that, Martin. I think, yep, you said to install the straps. Yeah, and we know that there's straps on Amazon for $50. We know that. We have not experienced or tried to we need to work let me back up, sorry. We need to benchmark this and see what our other partners, as far as like in Colorado and other areas that are that have a lot of bears. We do have bear bins that we've been able to we have history on and information on, but the carts are definitely something that's new for us. Why we are working through the research and trying to get what's best for your community. Obviously, we're working with Stacy and I don't know who said it earlier, but Stacy is absolutely amazing. So thank you, Stacy. We are in contact with Stacy. We are researching, but in the meantime, I think that what the community can do is definitely do not keep, if you can, don't keep your carts out for the bears. If you can put them in a garage, if you can keep them locked up someplace in a secure place, that would be really great. Once we obtain the information and the research, we will immediately pass it on to you. We've been working again with Stacy, the county, and then we're also going to be reaching out to our partners in maybe Colorado or other jurisdictions that have other ideas for us. So I think that's it. And thank you guys. I want to say this was a pretty amazing presentation. I learned so much. And I wouldn't have I missed dinner, and I'll miss dinner again and again and again to listen to Jessica. It was just absolutely mind-blowing for me. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, we thank Waste Management for coming to the meeting, and we've had several conversations over the last month on how to best handle this. And I know that some of the considerations that if people were to retrofit their own cans is that it does bring up some other interesting variables to consider. One is that even using a strap system or any kind of a metal strap system, a nylon system, is that if people forget to unlock them, that there is then the question of not having your trash picked up, and when would that occur and what would that look like. You also, if Waste Management can have some type of a valet service, so that in the event you forget, that for a fee of some kind, that that Waste Management driver could in fact do it, but again, to keep things on schedule and to easy, that there are strap systems that that I've looked at that is done by one hand. It's got a buckle on it, so nothing comes off the can itself, and so it makes it a little easier than if Waste Management or a resident wants to do it. It's just simply, it's really great to be able to push it, and it just opens with one hand. You can put the trash in with your other hand. And if it's a nylon strap and some kind of this special buckle that doesn't then cause harm to the trash can or anyone else around it as it's going up into your big trucks, that would be the best. There was a concern, I know, with some systems that, particularly the metal ones that have some kind of a lock system on it, is that that it makes it difficult to have like a carabiner or some other type of key lock that Waste Management would not have really access to, and wouldn't have time to do the carabiner, and to have a separate thing in one hand trying to unlock it with the other hand, that could also provide some resistance to having a successful program. So I know what I feel comfortable about is that the county and Waste Management are looking into this robustly, so that we can try to find these answers. Because if we, what we really want to do is have Mama Bear and her 3 cubs and any others that visit our area to not depend on Topanga trash cans as their food source. Because the minute that happens, then the bears can actually start coming farther into your property to find other food sources as well. And then that's where you get these horrible conflicts that won't be good for the bears or for the residents, their family, their livestock, their homes. We've seen photos and videos, not in Topanga, but of bears just destroying whatever it is they're in contact with, trying to get to the food source. So I think to stay safe, we need to find a way that works for everyone, and then that works with Waste Management and their program. So Topangans, what I'd like to say to you is that Town Council is really working hard to find a way to mitigate these trash issues. And again, if you end up wanting to retrofit your current your current cans, just to keep in mind that if you can find something that's bear certified, that's gone through testing, would be good to have it where you don't have to have additional locks on it, that it's a simple one-handed thing so that it makes it easier in the event that you do forget to unlock it on the day of trash day, that it still is, fairly accessible for waste management to handle. Again, nothing's been approved yet, so we're just kind of working through this. And I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions and suggestions on different types of systems that you've seen and read about, and we would love to hear about all of them. And so what I would suggest is, if you want, send the information to our email address, which is contact@topangatowncouncil.org. And we would love to take your insights, take anything that you have found, so that we can then kind of sift through it all and then pass it on so that it can be studied a little bit more. I think that was about it for the trash can part of the presentation. We have been recording this meeting, and it will be available on onetopanga.com. Give us a few days to get it posted. And we will also put it in the One Topanga newsletter that comes out September 1st. So if you wanted to go back and revisit some of the conversation, because there was so much amazing information, it was hard to take in all of it at once. Or if you know of residents or neighbors that you would like to pass it on to, that would be great, because like we said, it's going to take all of us working together. Otherwise, the bears are going to continue their current way of behaving. And what we want to do is to try to find a way to alter that.
Stacy, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
Are you going to be all of this information that you're gathering, you're requesting people to share with you, will you then be running that by both the waste management team and Jessica and the Bear Wise folks?
Absolutely,
so
because we've really got to find the one, a couple of systems that we think is really going to be beneficial all around. We have to think of the big picture and not just one particular incident. And as you know, Topanga with its trash is a challenging operation. Waste management is limited on the size of trucks that they can bring into the canyon because of our curvy roads and being very narrow. So there's just a lot of considerations that have to come into play as to how we can make trash management work. But Jessica did say a few things. Let me just quickly share.
So one other,
to share this again, if I may, bearwise.com is a fabulous website that Jessica turned us on to, and it has all kinds of information, including talking about trash management. So I would encourage you to go to bearwise.org and really read that information. They have videos and other things that you can look at. The second thing is something we've already posted on onetopanga.com with all of our bear articles that we've been putting up, is the Be Bear Wise at Home checklist. And Jessica's office also sent this to us. This gives you just some real basic information of all of the things that she talked about tonight. And as you can see, it goes into fruit trees, gardens, composting, beehives, and a lot of other information. So I would encourage you to download that. We're putting it in the chat right now, but you can also go to onetopanga.com. And I think that's it, Rosie. Yeah, we're going to be sharing the information with all the powers to be to try to find a way to have better trash management regarding our bears.
Thank you so much, Stacy. That's wonderful and really helpful. And Steve, Eric, and Kim, thank you so much for all the efforts that you guys are putting into trying to figure out how we can do this. I think I would like to just confirm what Jeff and Jessica said. So Jeff and Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are now becoming a bear community, and that our future is bright with bears. So that means that this is not necessarily a one-off event. It's something that we need to be thinking about as these 3 cubs start setting up their territories. Maybe they find friends that they bring in, however this all happens, becoming a Bear Wise and Bear Aware community is just as important as our Firewise stuff. So let's keep thinking about that. And making sure that we're looking at this in the long term. So that means that while we've got these short-term potential solutions that we're going to try out, and it's been great that you guys have been putting what's working, what hasn't worked in the chat. That's super helpful. Please keep that information coming to us so that we can get to a point where we can put some recommendations on One Topanga and share that out with the community so that we can get more than 60% of our community doing this, because it's going to take that to make sure that we keep our bears safe. One last quick thing, that gentle reminder that overfilling and overstuffing your trash cans so that the lid doesn't fall down is like an open invitation, not only to bears, but also to the coyotes and the raccoons. And some of our other neighbors, non-human neighbors. So just trying to manage our own trash in such a way that we are, minimizing the attraction as best we can. So Stacy, I think you and Jaspreet, we're going to take a few minutes and go through a couple of the questions.
Yeah, Jaspreet, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. I think I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that have been asked by different residents. There is concern by mothers, especially about their young children, their dogs, especially when they have seen the bear, mama bear and her cubs on their properties, concern for their youngsters and their dogs. Do they need to lock everybody up? Are the kids and their pets in danger? So that's one question that's been asked several times. And the other one is there a way to alert where the mama bear and her cubs are? Is she finding a home in one particular area of Topanga or all over Topanga? That's the second thing. And there are several residents who would like to share their videos and pictures. So since we've shared contact info, I think they can do that directly.
Yeah, thank you. I can go ahead and take a stab at both of those questions.
Excellent.
So first, just to address any safety concerns, I do have to have that caveat of course they are wild animals. We can never know for sure how an animal is going to respond to a human, to a dog, to a particular situation. We can really only use the information that we have at hand, knowing about black bear behavior and typical responses to influence how they might respond. What I can say is that like I mentioned in the presentation, really just giving these animals as much space as possible if they are encountered at a close proximity, that's going to do wonders, right? For kids, I think it's great just to start connecting with kids and letting them know, hey, we have bears in the community. The Bearwise website actually has some really great kid-focused educational materials as well, just for children to start learning about being bearwise and having bears in the area and what they should do if they run into a bear. But for human interactions, again, black bears are really going to be trying to avoid those direct interactions with people, unless we're starting to hear instances of people feeding bears. I didn't mention that in my presentation, but hopefully it goes without saying that we would strongly discourage any kind of feeding of any wildlife, but especially bears, because we really, really want to maintain that level of not necessarily fear, but just, recognition that humans, we actually don't want to go near them. It's very, very important so that they're not associating humans with food. So, at least for human safety, that's my take. For dogs, I would say, again, like I mentioned, dogs can exacerbate situations. They may chase bears. The barking can be very upsetting to bears. At night, I would highly recommend, again, keeping dogs indoors, not just for the safety of the bears, but for your safety of your dog, only because we do have other animals, right, in the area, including mountain lions. But bears, or excuse me, dogs will actually chase bears, and it could put that bear into a situation where it needs or feels like it needs to defend itself if it's not able to escape. So again, keeping dogs indoors at night, especially at night, or anytime, if they're not able to be observed outdoors in the yard, and then keeping on leash. That's already going to go a long way, just in preventing those kinds of conflicts.
Jessica, is there a time of day where the bears roam more, night, day, or is it, what is?
Yeah, great question. So from what we can see with the temporal data, again, we haven't done a lot of assessment of the data just yet, their color data, but from what we can tell, it does seem like these bears tend to be moving around the communities more so at night, which is what you would expect for bears that still have some level of hesitation being around people, but still being interested in the resources that people are providing. I mean, that's not that you want to see bears getting into trash or other human resources, but you want to see more of that activity at night, because it does indicate that these are still bears that are still wary of people. Not that bears can't be active during the day, and not that that's necessarily a red flag if we're seeing them during the day. Again, it just kind of depends on the resources available. If the bear maybe got spooked and it was sleeping and had to leave the area during the day, there's a whole lot that could be going on. But to very quickly answer the second question then about alerts. Unfortunately, the GPS collars don't have that level of technology. We're not getting real-time data, and I'm sure Jeff can speak to this too, since this is a common question, I think, with mountain lions as well. Yeah, just the technology doesn't exist for that. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't know if Jeff, you want to speak to that more, but it's really just kind of showing us where the bears have been, and again, really haven't fully looked at if there's any particular areas they're hanging out in more so. It seems pretty well dispersed from what we can see at this time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. There is quite a bit of chatter in the chat about residents learning of their neighbors or friends or others feeding the bears or leaving food out for the bears. I think you've covered that, but is there anything additional you'd like to add? Because people are saying, should they be fined? How do we mitigate something like this?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, just to reiterate, really encourage not feeding bears. There is an LA County Ordinance Act against feeding of bears and other wildlife, and I apologize, I don't know it offhand. I know it exists. You can look it up. So there are already ordinances existence that are aimed at trying to prevent that kind of feeding.
Well, guys, we are getting close to the end here. We've gone over almost 5 minutes. The information that you guys have provided, Jeff and Jessica, thank you so, so much. That was really super helpful and really instructive. We're hoping that you're getting lots of love in the chat, so I hope you can see that, and many thank yous. And Stacy and the waste management team, thank you also for all of your efforts to try to figure out how we can do our best to make the trash cans less accessible to the bears. And just want to say to all of those of you who have joined us tonight, we really appreciate you doing that. And now take it and spread the word, because there were only about 105 of us on this call tonight, which is not bad, but there are about 10,000 residents in the community. So we're not hitting critical mass yet in terms of information. And if we want to keep ourselves and all of the wildlife that we move to Topanga to enjoy safe, we need to start figuring out how to do all these things. So just want to say thank you so much again to everyone. Stacy and Jaspreet and Taylor, if you guys wouldn't mind staying on for just a moment so that we can make sure that we download the chat properly, so that we can make sure that all of our questions get addressed and get posted on the One Topanga site.
Thank you. And just one really quick town council announcement while we have a lot of people on the chat. Speaking of safety for the community, the Topanga Emergency Management Task Force, which is a collaboration of county, state, and local emergency organizations, been around since the year 2000. They did the Topanga Survival Guide website and the guide guide and all that. We are hosting a Ready Fast Topanga Emergency Fair on Saturday, October 4th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Topanga Community House. You'll get more information coming in the upcoming One Topanga newsletter. If you don't get that, go on to onetopanga.com and sign up for the newsletter. And that's it. I just want to get a quick mention in there about our big emergency fair that's going to really help Topangans prepare and to be able to respond and recover from catastrophic events.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And I want to end one quick thing. Susan has been doing amazing jobs helping with wildlife conflicts throughout the canyon for years. Do check out her website if you have questions as well. So I think with that, we'll just say thank you to everyone and, appreciate all your interest and concern.
Thank you, Rosie. Thanks for putting all this together for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate this community effort. It's amazing. It really is, truly. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys for coming, and we really appreciate getting the word from the experts. So thank you again.